Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We're going to be covering something that we get a lot of questions about, and that is what does it actually look like to deal with the IRS? So that's what's going to be the focus today. We're going to go through some case studies, walk through the steps, and what actual cases have to deal with in dealing with the IRS. So I think that's going to be very helpful. Kind of give people an idea of what does it look like, what are the steps, and what are some challenges that people face in dealing with the IRS. So we're just going to pull up some cases. Again, no names because that's all confidential, but we're going to go through the actual history of some cases, and give people an idea of what it looked like to actually deal with the IRS and deal with certain situations. So I'm excited about this, and we will be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy with us. Um, a couple things. Keep the light going. So I'm going to put some light on my face. There we go. So a couple articles about the hurricanes and devastation out there. So these are helpful articles for individuals facing the massive damage that they've had and want to kind of get this information out first and start with it. So the first one is a CNBC article. Sorry about technical difficulties trying to get this up. So this is a great article. I thought this was very interesting from CNBC. Some hurricane victims can get a tax break for losses, and there are massive losses involved when your home is wiped out, when you have severe damage. So again, I think this is very interesting uh, and important for victims of Helene and Milton, and it's a huge part of the Southeast that got hammered by these hurricanes. So again, it just shows one area where it's just absolute mayhem and debris. Um, I mean, that's just pretty brutal, and I would definitely check with the tax expert, a CPA that feels comfortable in dealing with these. But if you're in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and were affected by the hurricane, it needs to be first declared a disaster area by the federal government, which most likely will, if it hasn't been already. Um, and it's the damages could be in the tens of billions, so it's definitely something that should qualify here. So you can amend your 2023 returns for a casualty loss tax deduction, but it's complicated. So this is where you really need to talk to a CPA that knows what they're doing, is familiar with this, and it can help you go back and amend your 23 returns and take advantage of this. So so they're talking about before the Trump tax cuts. We really want to focus on afterwards. So restricted eligibility. So only federal losses through 2025 will qualify, and that's when the law sunsets, etc. So you want to claim this sooner. You want to figure this out and get this claimed on your tax returns to get this tax write-off. And again, you focus with the adjusted basis or the original purchase price plus the cost of certain improvements. And then you have to figure out the correct fair market value decline from the disaster, which is going to take time. Because nobody knows what the market looks like afterwards. It's going to be substantially lower. And then you subtract out insurance proceeds, which you actually receive, and other relief payments, and then subtract out either $100 or 10% of your AGI, whichever is higher. So again, it's not something I would recommend you just going and trying to do. but it's driven by congressional action. I would be very surprised if they don't grant this for this area, but you have to make sure that you're within these disaster areas, that you qualify, that you own property hit by this loss. Um, Talk to a CPA, get this assistance and help that's out there and has been in the law. And keep in mind, it could change in 2025, so you might want to go ahead and qualify for that. And if you don't qualify for it now, you might later, depending on what Congress does with the Trump tax cuts. They keep some of it, they pass some of it, etc. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Next article I want to cover, and this is something I actually mentioned. Now, talking about Taylor Swift donating $5 million, people were, and I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift, I'll put that out there. But when someone does something good, they take it and give $5 million. Could she have given more? Sure. But come on, she gave Philip $5 million. Again, if Hollywood at large opened up their wallets and each donated $1 million or $5 million or whatever, that would be huge. So again, I want to tip my hat to her and say, look, good thing here. So when we're out there, beware of charity scams. So a lot of people want to help out. We Americans, we have good hearts, and beware of charity scams, because unfortunately you have a lot of these that happen. They're not just domestic scams. A lot of them are foreign scams as well. But there's plenty of people that will take advantage of horrible situations just like this. So the IRS came out with this article yesterday, and it was right on point. It was kind of tickled to see that. I mentioned it yesterday, and later that day they came out with an article on this. So they have a tax-exempt organization search tool on irs.gov. The link is right here. And like always, all these articles are going to be linked directly to our website, or you can just go to irs.gov, click on news, and it'll come up on top. So just to show you, if you just go to irs.gov, click on news, it's the top article from today, October 15th. And that's how you can find this and get to this tax-exempt organization search to see if they're actually a tax-exempt organization with the IRS. So first step, you want to verify the legitimacy of the credibility of the charity. Check its eligibility to receive tax-deductible charitable contributions. You can also search for information about an organization's tax-exempt status and filings. So again, all right, just click on the one thing. Always verify. So they'll use names that sound like well-known charities to confuse people. They use emails, fake websites, or alter or spoof their caller ID to make it look like a real charity. So you have to be very careful about who's raising this. If someone does contact you, what I would say, look, I'm going to reach out myself. Don't deal directly with them. Don't go to a phone number. Go look it up yourself. Contact a legitimate charity. And not all charities are equal. I'll bag on Goodwill because they're one of my top of my IRS. Goodwill is a horrible charity to donate to. People do it all the time. I get it. It's easy. It's convenient. But very little of that money actually goes to people in need. Again, when you look at good charities to donate to, Salvation Army is actually very high. Most of their funds go to help the poor. Goodwill, their CEO makes millions of dollars. Again, this is just what I've read off of different charity ranking websites, and you can go to those and look and say, okay, is this a charity that spends most of their money fundraising, or is this a charity that it's just a charity that actually gets the dollars where they're supposed to? So definitely check that out. Never work with charities that ask for donations by giving numbers from a gift card or wiring money. That's clearly a scam. And this is just scamming in general. It's safest to pay by credit card or check. If it turns out to be a scam, you can just cancel it. And this is only after verifying that it's real. Do not share your information. Again, scammers, sometimes they're not looking to rip you off. They're just looking to get your information to sell it. They're looking for both money and personal information. Never give them social security numbers, credit card numbers, or PINs. And if it's a high pressure situation, it's most likely a scam. And legitimate charities are happy to get a donation at any time. You should not feel rushed. The exception to that is the firefighters and police organizations sometimes. And I don't mind, I've donated to them in the past, but then they oh my gosh, they bug the crap out of you. They really bug you if you don't donate on a regular basis. And make sure you keep track of any donations so you can claim a deduction if you itemize on your next return. So, and they have to go to a qualified tax exempt organization. So again, really important to follow these steps. I know I've kind of gotten in the weeds here, but I want to encourage people, first of all, to donate. But secondly, do it through legitimate charities. Make sure your dollars are actually going to go to the people to help. Some of the best are, American Red Cross. I'm going to throw a plug in there for my own church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because it's mostly all volunteer. It has a very high percentage of dollars that actually go to help people in disaster relief, and that's one of the reasons they use their funds for it. So and there are other churches that do amazing work. Like I said, Salvation Army is another one that does amazing work as well. So moving on, more news about Nippon Steel, and this is an interesting story overall. It touches on politics. It touches on what's going to happen with their own national security. Well, Japan is a friend and a close ally. Who knows what's going to happen in 20, 30 years? And so that's why it's very concerning. Both the Biden administration and Trump administration have said they will fight this, they will stop this acquisition. And Nippon Steel, Japanese company, is trying to placate them by saying, look, they'll get rid of their 50% stake in the Alabama plant to make the purchase of U.S. steel happen. So again, it can save union jobs, it can really help out, but at the same time, selling vital industries to foreign companies is a national security concern. So what is the right step here? I don't know. But again, it's that they're really trying to make this work. They're trying to get this done before the election, and especially before Trump takes office, because Trump has been very clear that he will not allow this to happen. So they say they will block it instantaneously if he wins the November election, for national security issues. So there's an arbitration board currently going on. So keep an eye on it and see what really happens with this down the road. So we're running out of time. Got some more short articles to dive into before we really hit these case studies. But we're going to be right back after this next break. And there's plenty to spend a lot of time on these case studies and really flesh those out. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for watching here. We're going to jump to the next article here, and this is it from Fox Business about hardware wholesaler True Value files for bankruptcy. Now, we always have normal turnover, and I don't want to alarm people here, but a lot of businesses are struggling, especially retail businesses in today's economy. And so the wholesaler True Value files for bankruptcy, plans to sell to a rival. So these stores aren't being shut down, but they are being sold, and there's a catch here. So they're going to sell to your rival Do It Best. However, the stores themselves are independently owned and operated. The stores that are independently owned and operated are not part of the bankruptcy. So this is a wholesaler, and the independently owned and operated stores are not going to be affected by this. So it's going to continue to supply products to 4,500 locations. Again, this has been around for 75 years. True Value is the name I've seen, and I'm not sure if we have one locally, but it's been around. That's going to be. It has between 500 million, 1 billion in liabilities, which is why it's filing for bankruptcy, and it's just going to be restructuring, stepping out of actually owning the stores itself. The independently owned and operated stores will be fine, and they will continue to get products, etc. But True Value is stepping out of actually owning the stores itself. So it's again, similar article. You have 7-Eleven shutting down 450 underperforming stores as well. We're seeing a lot of this happen. In this case, however, good thing that we're not going to see a bunch of store closures. It's just going to change ownership for those that are owned under True Value, and the independently owned and operating stores will have to figure this out as we move forward. But again, affecting local hardware stores, and the competition is time. Here locally, we have an Ace that I enjoy going to. They have a lot of tools. If you can't find something, they don't have as big of inventory as Lowe's or Home Depot, but they have all the different sizes of screws. I mean, there's definitely times you absolutely want to go to Ace instead of some of these bigger box stores, and the one we have locally does a great job about connecting with the community. They have one of those trains that goes around the top. I mean, it's just a cool place to go, and we're losing a lot of those. We just had another Home Depot built within 5 minutes of our house, and again, it's threatening the smaller, community-oriented, locally owned Ace Hardware. So it just kind of makes me scratch my head. And we choose as consumers, where do we go and where do we spend our dollars? So moving on, this is interesting. We've got 2 articles here. So the first one is from CNBC. Crude oil prices fall more than 5%. This came out yesterday at 5:42. So a.m. Eastern time. So crude oil prices fall more than 5%. I think we're seeing this at the gas pump. Prices overall are going down a little bit due to oversupply and world supply of oil. And the main reason for that is world oil demand is going down and is slowing down as China is slowing down as their economy is struggling. And this is the 3rd week in the month in a row that they've cut their forecast. And so you have oil futures falling more than 5%. One of the big concerns was about Israel and Iran. Israel has not hit Iran back that we know of from the huge missile barrage that hit it. They very well could. It's yet to be seen what Israel will do in response to Iran's huge missile barrage just a couple weeks ago. So right now, supply keeps flowing, and there's an overabundance of supply. So to adjust to that, they probably will. Who knows what they're going to do? But ironically, the very next article from Yahoo Finance is about a possible Middle East supply disruption could send oil over $100 a barrel. So, and this is Citi Group or Citi Research, and it raised its bull case scenario on Monday. So again, the article the day before said it raised its bull case scenario for oil prices for this quarter and the next one, going in the opposite direction of OPEC. Why? They're freezed about the growing Middle East conflict. So again, if they're believing that's going to continue to spiral out of control or get worse, and they're saying that for the 4th quarter of 24 and then the 1st quarter of 25, they believe it's going to go to $120 per barrel, where it's currently at $80 per barrel. That's very expensive. That's a huge increase in the price of oil globally. So again, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. People are making predictions. Oil is still very volatile given what's happening in the world, especially the Middle East. And let's see, I just on my vacation went up to Utah and back, and overall saw cheaper prices, which was I'm very grateful for. Let's see if they hold. So who knows what's going to happen. Last article I want to touch on, and this is a big one, for the ERC. There's plenty of people waiting on these ERC claims. They put in these applications, some of them years ago, or a year or more ago. And the IRS is finally focusing on getting this backlog processed, about 400,000 claims for businesses. And that's about $10 billion worth that people are waiting on. So they're trying to clear out a large volume of these claims and get this money out, either approve or deny them. And so they're also using third-party payers to help clients and help get this taken care of. So again, they also have the voluntary disclosure program open through November 22, and then the withdrawal programs if you think you're going to have issues with this. So talk to your CPA, get a second opinion, make sure that you qualify for this. And if you did, very good news that you might have some funds coming to really help you on your way. So that kind of wraps up the news portion. And want to pivot to our topic of the day. I want to spend a lot of time on this. Really going through some case studies and what it looks like to hire a tax professional, in particular our company, and to go through the process. And it is a process. And so people often think, hey, I hired you and it's been a month. Why isn't everything resolved? Because the IRS doesn't move that fast. So we're just going to take some cases. I've got one in particular. This one is a little bit longer that I'm going to start with, and just kind of go through the process. So this is an old elderly couple, and they have a disabled son, bless their heart. And they first this goes back. This is a completely resolved case. First hired us towards the end of 2020. And the first thing we did, we had the discussion, discussed their case. They thought about it for about 2 weeks, and then they decided to hire us on. So when they hired us on, they initially hired us, looked for an offer and compromise. And we charged them for that, and they paid for it. It turned out that they also needed audit representation. So there was a lot of work to be done on the case. And we hammered the audit once everything. So I just kind of want to give you an idea. We sent them the power of attorneys, the fee agreement. You have to have some kind of contract with whoever you hire, and you have to do the power of attorneys. We got those back within a few days pretty quickly. And then we were able to do what's called a compliance check or a liability check. This is where once the power of attorney processes, your representative can access the IRS computers. Now, there's various ways to do this. There are programs now where people can go and just pull it all online. They can tell, and they can give you fancy reports and that explains how much you owe for each period. They can give you an estimate of when these tax periods are going to expire. We're a little old school. We like to actually have that conversation with the IRS. It takes a little more time, but when you talk to them, you can ask questions and dig into something if something's not right. So that's one of the big concerns, and that's why I'm not actually calling the IRS and speaking to someone. Even then, you can miss information, or they can just not give you good information. So we'll typically do both, pull the transcripts and talk to someone. So when we first, within a few weeks of them hiring, we had reached out, reviewed the case with the IRS. There were no balances at that time. So why did they hire us? Because they didn't have anything filed since 2015. So this is 2020, so about 5 years they hadn't filed returns, and it was in the audit unit. So they were under examinations, and it was we were following up with the auditor to make sure, hey, why isn't this moving forward? Kind of fallen in a crack. Now, to be fair, this was October of 2020, so this is post-COVID, kind of right smack dab in the middle of COVID. So the IRS had been shut down for a few months, and when you shut down the IRS, it is a bear for them to recover. So whenever you have major disasters, whenever you have something big that happens with the federal government, it can slow down and gum up the works in a serious way. So we stayed on this case, finally got a hold of the revenue agent or the auditor. That's what they call them, revenue agents if it's in audit or exams. And it took us about a month, just under a month, to get a hold of the revenue agent and kind of go through what was going on. They were being audited for multiple years, from 2011 all to 2018. So they had some years that they had filed and a bunch of other years that they hadn't filed. So we went through this, and this is very interesting, that just because people are in a nasty audit, people tend to freak out and think, I've got to pay this huge amount, there's no way I can pay it. Just because the IRS assesses amount doesn't mean that's what you have to pay. They're very different departments at the IRS. So the first major department is tax filing. You file your tax returns, or they file for you. Then there's the audit examination where the IRS doesn't agree with your tax returns, and you go back and forth, and finally a number is settled on one way or the other, and then it goes to collection. So you get applied at the apple at each phase of dealing with the IRS. So we got the audit report. We reviewed it, sat down and reviewed it with them. But now we're into December. Now, one of the things they didn't have in place, they had an adult son who was disabled, who was never going to be self-supporting. And here the parents were taking care of them, and they don't have anything set up to protect their son. So we referred them to an estate planning attorney who set up a special needs trust for their son. So as we're going through our case, we just don't have the blinders on and say we're just focusing on tax law. That is all we focus on, but we also issue spot and say, hey, you have this need here. You might want to talk to someone to address this. You don't have a trust. You might want to talk to a state attorney. You might want to talk to a corporate attorney. We refer people out to all kinds of other kinds of professionals to make sure they are taken care of. And then over Christmas, things slow down. The IRS shuts down for a couple weeks. And during this process, about a month later in January, we're still waiting on the auditor, and they got a scary letter. This letter, hold on, see if I can't pull it up. They didn't send it to us. So this letter was someone else, another firm or lead generation company. They got a solicitation, and it was meant to scare the bejesus out of them, meant to freak them out. And so when they called us, we calmed them down. We said, send us a letter, we'll review it, and took care of them. So again, there's plenty of bumps in the road that can pop up. It can be very confusing things from other companies. The important thing is you have an expert in your corner, use them. Call them, send the information to them, and again, if they're a good expert, they'll help guide you through the process and explaining things as we move through the whole process. So they had submitted all of their documents by February. We received them, put them together, and again, we responded to the revenue agent. Again, we had responded to the audit, and during this time, it's just the months are going by, Again, not a quick process. They hired in October. Now we're in March of 21. And then next step here, and I'm just going through their case. Once the audit was complete in April, again, not very quickly, now this is where it's shifting from the audit department to collections. They were assigned a revenue officer, so now they had a balance. And just to give you an idea what their balance looked like, it was about 4, 5, 6, around 650,000. Quick numbers there. So again, during this time, we're getting this information, we're putting this together, guiding them through this process. So it was put in the queue for a revenue officer, but they didn't get actually assigned until a month later, which is actually pretty quick for a revenue officer. It's taking much longer today to get a revenue officer assigned and get things put together. So once the revenue officer was assigned, you would think things would move quicker. No. So once the revenue officer was assigned, we had already started. We already got their documents. We put together their financial information, and the IRS filed for them for 3 years, 16, 17, and 18. We had to go back and show that they didn't have a filing requirement. They also had a business that they shut down. And what happened here, they a lot of it was their fault, but in 2017, these last years, he had a stroke and could no longer run his business. So this is what happens. Life happens. And when you think things are going well, if you don't prepare for the eventualities, they come up and surprise you. And I was just talking with my sister-in-law's husband while in Utah, and he's doing very well for himself. He's a professor at BYU. He's a genetics guy, which beyond me, way beyond me. But I was talking about finances, which is beyond him. And I was telling him, look, if you haven't considered a trust, we have grandparents that either passed away or very ill. It's like you should protect your assets for your kids, for your future. And he's doing a lot of the things right. But I recommended that. And so when we're talking to them, making sure they're doing things right as we go through the process to avoid surprises like this. So that's why not only did we take care of them as far as the tax issue, but we gave them great advice to protect their adult son moving forward. We're coming up on a break. We're going to continue to go through this when we get back. And I think it should be very helpful to just walk through this with you. Welcome back, everybody. And I hope this is informative as we're going through this. So we started in October of 2020. Now we're in May of 2020. We have already produced a preliminary 433A submitted to the revenue officer, and the revenue officer wasn't even assigned at the time. So, when we started in October, we had to deal with the audit first, and then we're moving to collections with the revenue officer. And interestingly enough, we sent the first 433A. We said, look, this is preliminary. We're still getting all the information from the client. We need a full list of assets, cash, property, vehicles not sold. And then he had an RV business, which is just his business. And apparently, as we go through this, there were some surprises. So that's beginning of May, where we are. We're asking for all the proof of information and documents. We're going back and forth with the revenue officer. We had balances for 16 through 18 because they hadn't filed everything. They didn't feel like they had a filing requirement for 2019 and 20, so they never did those returns. the revenue officer said, look, you still had some stuff you were winding down from the business, which apparently was true. The IRS usually has more information than we do about this, and so we had to go back and get 19 and 20 filed. And so we're trying to get those done as quickly as possible, and got a CPA on board to get those filed and get those taken care of. So we sent another 433A end of May, and as we waited for the tax return to be done, again, they got put in the hands of a CPA in May, and we're waiting for this to be get done. Part of this, during this time, through June into July, we're trying to get more information from them. Let's make sure we have everything. We want to have a complete picture, because the last thing you want to do is come off as shady or you're hiding things from the IRS. So unfortunately, that's what happened in this case. Mid-June, after we sent the preliminary results to the revenue officer, we spoke to him, I spoke to him, and oopsie, they had another $150,000. So they had some cash put together. And what I recommend is that they put it all into an investment account to support themselves in retirement. Not an official retirement account, because they were already retirement age. So it wasn't a 401k or an IRA, but it can be in an annuity. It can be in stocks, bonds, ideally something conservative, a mutual fund or some kind of conservative investment that will give them good returns, consistent returns moving into the future. That's why annuities for senior citizens can be very nice. But oopsie, they found another $150,000. And as we went through this case, this happened a couple times where they had another $200,000 there, the money that had been squirreled away, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? They initially hired for an offer in compromise, and then it turned out they had some vehicles they hadn't sold, some RVs that they hadn't sold that they held on to. They had all this cash, and it made it so that any offer would have been either impossible to do or extremely expensive to do. So they would have had to sell everything and give it to the IRS, and they didn't want to do that. So here we are in the middle of the case, in the quandary. We have cash assets popping up. So this is why when you first talk to your attorney, tell them everything, because they can't give you a good recommendation if they don't have the full picture. So especially with the vehicles, again, that was a huge problem, and it got messier as we went. So now we're moving into July of 2021. Again, they hired in October. Here we are in, actually they hired the end of September. Then they're working on finalizing the 1920 return. So the CPA was on board in May. We're waiting on the clients to get all the information to the CPA. The sooner you get that in, the better it goes. Again, we're going back. The revenue officer's asking for information, and he's kind of saying, look, I've been waiting a couple months. The deadlines have passed. So when deadlines have been passed with the IRS, you don't want to wait. In August, beginning of August, I talked not only to the CPA, I talked to the clients, and called the revenue officer to get everybody on the same page, say, hey, the CPA is working on it. We finally have everything in the CPA's hands. Again, spoke to the revenue officer. Again, we try to stay on top of this and make sure this is done. Once everything got put in the CPA's hands, just following up with the CPA, making sure everything is received and processed. And then it came up end of August that the revenue officer wanted us to wrap up the business. Typically, if the business has been closed for many years, we'll just ask them to just close it out, no big deal. But apparently there was some tax issues under the business as well. We quickly got the business power of attorney. We didn't charge the clients more for that. And we shut down the business with the revenue officer. And here we go, fast forward to September 7th. Now it's almost been a year that we've been working on the case. They're almost done with 19 and 20. So really what the case now has been waiting on for about 4 months is all of their financial information, which they kind of dribbled out, and to get all their tax returns done. So this is September of 2021. 19 was overdue. 20 needed to be filed, and I don't remember if they had an extension or not, but we need to get those in. So we updated their bank statements in September. Got updated information, but again, it's again still waiting on those returns through September, and we sent them updated bank statements. And it wasn't until October, I believe, we updated the 433A again with the new information we received. We sent it to them end of September, got that signed, got that in the revenue officer's hands. So this is supposed to be the complete and final financial statement, getting this information to the IRS revenue officer. And so we had it, we reviewed it with him. We got the tax returns in September 27th. Walked through this step by step. Now you have to remember, this is a $650,000 debt because they had other issues and they didn't have income. They needed to start making estimated tax payments, and we got them going on that because they had more income than initially reported. And then he was willing to set them up on an installment agreement of $130 a month on a $650,000 liability that will eventually expire starting in 2028, 2029. That was a great deal. We talked to the client, said, hey, here's your options. This is what it looks like with all the cash that you found and these extra RVs that you still haven't sold. This is a really good deal. And so they took it. They were very happy with it. They've been paying $130 a month ever since then. So we made the agreement in September, but then we had to get some paperwork. What's called a 433D, an installment agreement form. Submitted that. Started getting them making estimated tax payments. We had it submitted again by the end of September, so again very quickly. And then got over to the revenue officer's hands, followed up with him, and that got set up in October. So we got the approval letter on October 28th from the IRS. It included all the years. It should have been completed, right? We called them, went over their options, explained everything to them. They were very happy with this. And now the revenue officer is out of the case because the case has been set up in a resolution. With the installment agreement, it closes out. The IRS is off of it. No more garnishments, no more concerns. All they have to do is make sure they're not going to owe moving forward, and that's what the estimated tax payments are for. Number two, make sure that we're not that they stay on track with those payments. They still had assets of at least $22,000. They still had some other vehicles. Looking at offering compromise, it would have been a lot more expensive to do an offer than to just stay on their installment agreement. That's what they decided to do, is just stay on their installment agreement. That wasn't the end of the story, though. So again, they called. They had some questions about it. So again, we answered their questions. Moving in November, they spoke with me again in November. Made sure everything was clean, taken care of. We actually closed her out in December of 21. So just to give you an idea, this started in October of 2020, didn't close out until September, October of 2020. Didn't actually get completely closed out until December, beginning of December of 21. And if they would have chosen to do an offer after that, it would have added another 6 to 9 months to the process. Again, we had to get all the tax returns done. We have to do all that prep work before we can submit a case for an offer. So for some reason the auto withdrawal didn't actually happen. We did some touch-up work after the case should have been resolved, just to make sure everything was taken care of, everything was already negotiated. Oh no, they were concerned that the automatic withdrawals were coming out of their account, but eventually it takes the IRS 2 to 3 months to set that up. December delays that, and it was until I believe February that those started coming out, and they were all set. So they were making payments, waiting for that. So even then, they still had some questions, and a year later, April of 2022, they got some collection letters, and they're supposed to be in an installment agreement. So what happened? So we called the IRS, reviewed it with them, and for some reason, they had popped it back up. I spoke to the revenue officer who got notified that the case was active again, and within a month, those were put back in an installment agreement status with everything else. So there's a small issue. We took care of it quickly, didn't charge them to redress the case again, and then it was back to smooth sailing. So again, after that, we confirmed, followed up and confirmed, hey, everything's set for the installment agreement. They have been fine ever since. They got some letters. They sent to us, hey, can you look at this? We review it for free, but it's smooth sailing for them. And they actually just called me the other day, which is why their case was brought to my mind. They had some additional questions. We just answered for them. And that's how we treat our clients. When you come in, it was a fun case because they didn't tell us everything, but we still got them an excellent resolution. They're paying $130 a month on this huge debt. So I think we're figured out. Altogether, worst case scenario, they'll pay $15,600 over time, paying $130 a month on a $650,000 debt. So even though it wasn't an offer and compromise, too many things, they had too many assets. We were able to protect those assets from the revenue officer. We were able to get them an amazing deal, and they're very happy with it. So whenever they have questions, they call us. That is the kind of service you should get. So when you have questions, you should be able to get those answered. You should be able to find that peace of mind. And again, it is very important as you deal with your tax issues that you have someone that you feel comfortable with that can help you through the process. My number one recommendation, what would have made this case go quicker? Get your tax returns filed faster, number one. Number two, tell your attorney everything. If you're dealing, especially if you're dealing with an attorney, you have attorney-client privilege, which means they can't disclose anything to the IRS without your permission. There's been times to protect a client, I just sat there and I stay mum, or I'll give, we'll get that information, and then the IRS knows that I just need to get more information from the client. Something's going on, but I'm not going to disclose anything without your permission. We don't hide that stuff to the IRS. We don't lie to the IRS. It's absolutely not worth it. But that was a case where we had some monkey wrenches, and with all that investment that had to happen, we referred them to a financial planner. So in that case, we referred them to a estate planner for a special needs trust for their son. We referred them to a financial planner, and I believe it was yesterday, they called them, and I reached back out to them and answered a quick question. They had some questions, what's going on with this? Do we need help with this? And I said, well, this is the kind of attorney you need to talk to, and to address that question. And it was something to do with transferring property with their son getting older. They're getting older, and with their disabled son, they need to transfer title in their home to their son, put in his name so that he'll have something to support himself. And eventually their daughter is now going to take over the care of their adult son. So important questions here. And even if that's not our specialty, we have plenty of excellent contacts to make sure they get taken care of. So we made a very crazy process easy for them, gave them peace of mind. And when I spoke to them yesterday, it's been 4 years since they hired us. We still will answer their questions and take care of them and help the process easy for them. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, give us a call, 520-485-7371, and have a great day.